A war is fought for 10 years over a woman who was never consulted about any of it. Thousands of men die on a beach far from home for a cause that most of them had no stake in, and when it finally ends, when the city falls and the victors sail home, the winning side loses almost everything it has left. This is the story the ancient Greeks considered their greatest literary achievement. Once you've heard the whole story, you'll understand exactly why. These two poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey, Homer's epics, were composed somewhere around the 8th century BC, drawing on stories that had been circulating by word of mouth for hundreds of years before anyone wrote them down. The Trojan War, if it happened at all, probably happened somewhere around 1200 BC. That means these stories were travelling, changing, being transformed and reperformed for 4 centuries before Homer. The version we have today is the version that survived because it worked. All of it earned its place in front of live audiences who had heard these stories before and would have noticed immediately if something ran false. And these poems, they didn't just survive, they became the foundation on which Western literature built itself. We'll start with the Iliad, because that's where the epics begin. The Trojan War has been going for 10 years by the time Homer picks up the story. The Greeks, Homer calls them the Achaeans, have been camped on the shore outside Troy for a decade. They've sailed across the Aegean from the mainland of Greece to retrieve Helen, Queen of Sparta, who has left her husband Menelaus and gone to Troy with a Trojan prince named Paris. Troy is a walled city, well defended with a formidable army and powerful allies. The Greeks can't breach the walls. The Trojans can't push the Greeks back to the sea. 10 years in, and here they still are. Both sides are exhausted. Both sides are wondering privately what exactly they're doing here. Into this deadlock, Homer drops a match. The Iliad begins with a word, Menis, rage. The rage of Achilles. That's what the poem announces it's about in its first line before it's told you anything else. It's about rage and what rage does to a man and everyone around him. Achilles is the greatest warrior the Greek world has produced. This isn't really in dispute, even his enemies know it. He's fast, lethal, and supernaturally gifted in battle. He is half god after all, his mother being the sea nymph, Thetis, and he knows something most of the other heroes don't. He's been given a choice. Either a long, unremarkable life, or a short life and eternal glory. He chose the second one. He's at Troy knowing that he will die here. The trouble starts with Agamemnon. Agamemnon is the commander of the Greek forces. Not because he's the best warrior, he very much isn't, but because he's the most powerful king, the one who organised this whole expedition. During a raid on a nearby city, the Greeks have taken captives, divided among the commanders as prizes. One of Agamemnon's prizes is a woman named Chryseis, whose father happens to be a priest of Apollo. The priest comes to the Greek camp with gold and pleads for her return. Agamemnon refuses, not particularly nicely. Apollo, offended on his priest's behalf, sends a plague. The Greek camp starts dying. After 9 days of this, Achilles calls an assembly. A seer tells them what everyone has already worked out. Apollo is angry, Chryseis needs to be returned. Agamemnon agrees, grudgingly and publicly, and then announces that since he's giving up his prize, he'll be taking someone else's. He takes Briseis, a captive who belongs to Achilles. This is a genuine insult to Achilles, and he is understandably incandescent. He stands there with his hand on his sword, on the verge of killing Agamemnon in front of the entire Greek army, when Athena appears, visible only to him, and tells him to put this sword away. Words, she suggests, are better. Achilles listens to Athena. He does not kill Agamemnon, but he does abuse him, at considerable length and with some creativity, and then he withdraws. He will not fight. He goes back to his ships, sits down, and tells his mother what's happened. Thetis rises from the sea to listen, and when he asks her to appeal to Zeus, to tip the war in Troy's favour so the Greeks will understand what they've lost by dishonouring him, she does. The battles that follow are enormous and meticulously described. Meanwhile, the gods are making everything worse. They're petty, passionate, partisan, and frequently incompetent. There are scenes on Olympus that read almost like comedy. The gods squabbling over the fates of men, Hera scheming behind Zeus's back, Ares turning up wounded and complaining. And then the poem cuts back to the battlefield where the consequences of these divine quarrels are being paid for in blood by people who had no say in any of it. Hector needs a moment here, because Hector is the character who does the most to give the poem its heart. He is Troy's greatest warrior. He's also the most human figure in the poem, more human in some ways than the Greeks, who are nominally the heroes. He knows the war is probably lost. He fights anyway, not because he believes in glory or has divine backing, but because his city needs defending. There's a scene midway through the poem where Hector goes back inside the walls to see his wife Andromache and his infant son before returning to battle. Andromache begs him not to go back out. She tells him that when he dies, she knows she'll be taken as a slave and their son will have nothing. He tells her he has to go. He knows what's coming for her and he can't bear it, but he can't stand down either. His shame at doing so would be worse than death. Then he reaches for his son to hold him, and the baby screams, terrified by the horsehair crest on his father's helmet. So Hector takes off the helmet, puts it on the ground, and the baby reaches for him laughing. Hector puts the helmet back on. He goes back to the battle. For a long stretch of the poem, the Greeks suffer badly in Achilles' absence. Troy presses them back towards their ships. Heroes they've been following for thousands of lines start falling. The Greeks send an embassy to Achilles. Old Phoenix, who helped raise him, the great Ajax, Odysseus, king of Ithaca, with all his eloquence, and offer him extraordinary gifts. Briseis returned, kingdoms, Agamemnon's own daughter in marriage, whatever he wants. Achilles refuses. The war tilts further. The Trojans breach the Greek camp, reach the ships, begin setting them on fire, and Patroclus, Achilles' closest companion, the person he loves most in the world, cannot watch it anymore. He asks for permission to go out and fight, at least to drive the Trojans back from the ships. He will wear Achilles' armour. The Trojans will think it's Achilles. It might be enough to turn the tide. Achilles agrees. He gives detailed instructions. Drive them back from the ship, then stop. Don't pursue. Don't go near Troy's walls. Come back safely. Patroclus does not come back safely. He drives the Trojans back. He presses on, caught up in the momentum of it, pushing towards Troy's walls. And there, Apollo himself intervenes, knocking off his helmet, breaking his spear, stunning him. And then a Trojan warrior wounds him from behind, and Hector, seeing his chance, finishes it. He does not yet know what he has done. When the news reaches Achilles, he falls to the ground. He covers himself in ash and dirt. He screams, a scream so loud that his mother hears it from the bottom of the sea and comes to him. She holds him, asks what's wrong, already knowing. He tells her Patroclus is dead. Achilles blames himself, utterly overwhelmed with grief of the loss of the love of his life. The finest thing in his world is gone because he was sitting in his tent nursing his wounded pride, and now Patroclus is dead on the Trojan plain, and Hector has his armour and nothing, not Agamemnon's apology, not the return of Briseis, not the promise of all the treasure in the world means anything at all. The grief turns. Achilles goes back to war. He is something close to a force of nature now. He fills the river Scamander with so many bodies that the river itself rises up against him, flooding its banks in fury. He keeps killing. He finds Hector. Hector has been brave throughout this poem, but when Achilles comes for him, burning with grief in divine armour, Hector runs. He runs around the walls of Troy 3 times with Achilles behind him while his parents watch from the wall above. His father Priam begs him to come inside. His mother Hecuba pleads. He cannot make himself do it. He stops. He turns. They fight. Achilles kills him. And then Achilles does something unforgivable. He ties Hector's body to his chariot by the heels and drags it around the walls of Troy, in front of Priam, in front of Anonymity, who has just learned that her husband is dead and is watching his body desecrated. Achilles does this every day for 12 days. Then the Iliad ends with one of the most devastating scenes in all of literature. Priam, king of Troy, greatest city in the world, crumbling around him, son dead, goes alone at night to the Greek camp. He brings ransom. He goes to the tent of the man who killed his son and is desecrating his body, and he kneels. He takes Achilles' hands, the hands that killed Hector, and he kisses them. He says, "I am asking you for my son's body." Achilles looks at this old man and something shifts. He thinks of his own father, who is old and alive and will hear soon enough that his son is dead, because Achilles knows he's going to die here. They weep together. Two men on opposite sides of a war that's taken everything from both of them, sitting together in a tent in the dark. Achilles gives back the body. They eat together. The Iliad ends with Hector's funeral. Troy is still standing. The war isn't over. The Greeks won't take Troy for another year, and when they do, it won't be heroic. It'll be thanks to a horse. But the poem ends on a burial, not a victory. On grief, not triumph. And that feels right. 10 years later, Troy has fallen. A wooden horse full of soldiers, a city burning, women taken as prizes, children thrown from walls. The Odyssey begins with most of the Greek world having arrived home or died trying. And King Odysseus of Ithaca is still not home. He left Troy 10 years ago. He is, as the poem's opening tells us, a man of great cunning and experience, who's suffered enormously. He wants more than anything to get back to his home, his wife and his son. He has been trying by this point for a decade, and everything keeps going wrong. Part of the reason for that is Poseidon, god of the sea, who's furious with Odysseus for blinding his son, the Cyclops. We'll get to the Cyclops. The point is, Odysseus has a very powerful enemy, and crossing the sea is Poseidon's territory. The Odyssey opens not with Odysseus but with his son Telemachus, who is about 20 years old and has never met his father. While he's been away, Ithaca, Odysseus' island kingdom, has been invaded, not by soldiers but by suitors, over 100 of them, all competing for the hand of Penelope, Telemachus' mother, on the assumption that his father is dead and she needs a new husband. They've moved into the palace. They eat Odysseus' food, drink his wine, slaughter his animals, demand entertainment, harass the servants. They've been doing this for 3 years. Penelope has been managing this impossible situation through a combination of dignity, intelligence, and one of the greatest long cons in literature. She told the suitors she would choose among them when she had finished weaving a funeral shroud for Laertes, Odysseus' elderly father. She works on it every day. Every night she unpicks the day's work. She has kept this up for 3 years. The suitors have only just found out. Meanwhile, Odysseus is on the island of Ogygia with the goddess Calypso, who is in love with him and has been keeping him there. She offers him immortality. He turns it down. Every day he sits on the shore and looks at the sea and cries. He wants to go home. After years of this, the gods, Athena especially, who's Odysseus' champion, convince Zeus to send word to Calypso that he should be released. Calypso, to her considerable credit, lets him go. She helps him build a raft. She gives him supplies. She tells him how to navigate by the stars. She's sad and she says so. He sails. Poseidon spots him on the sea and wrecks him immediately. Odysseus swims for 3 days until he washes up on the shore of Scheria, the island of the Phaeacians, barely alive. At the court of the Phaeacians, Odysseus recounts the adventures he has experienced on his journey that got him there. Tales from warring tribes ransacking cities, encounters with the lotus eaters whose fruit make you forget that you want to go home. Then the Cyclops. The Cyclops' name is Polyphemus. He's the son of Poseidon, who we already know has it out for Odysseus. He's enormous, lives alone in a cave with his sheep. He eats several of Odysseus' men. Odysseus, trapped in the cave with the rest of his men, can't simply kill the Cyclops, because the Cyclops is the only one strong enough to move the boulder blocking the entrance. Here's the plan. Get the Cyclops drunk on wine, blind him with a sharpened stake while he sleeps, escape by hiding under the bellies of his sheep when he lets them out in the morning. The plan works, but before it works, there's the question of names. The Cyclops, charmed by the wine, asks Odysseus his name. Odysseus tells him his name is Nobody. When Odysseus drives the stake into the Cyclops' eye and he screams, and his neighbours come and ask what's wrong, he shouts that nobody is hurting him. So they go away. He escapes. And then Odysseus, who's survived through anonymity, can't help himself. As his boat pulls away, he shouts his real name at the Cyclops. He needs Polyphemus to know who bested him. Polyphemus prays to his father Poseidon, and Poseidon hears him. Hence all the shipwrecks that follow. As Odysseus' story goes on, his encounters start to feel like the world is testing him across every dimension. Aeolus, master of the winds, gives him a bag containing all the adverse winds, a guaranteed safe passage home. They're nearly there. Ithaca is visible when Odysseus falls asleep and his men, convinced that the bag contains treasure he's keeping from them, open it. The winds explode out. They're blown back to the beginning. The Laestrygonians, a race of cannibalistic giants, destroy all of the fleet except Odysseus' single ship, left to float alone. Circe, the sorceress, turns his men into pigs, which Odysseus reverses with divine help. Then the underworld. Odysseus is sent to the land of the dead to consult the prophet Tiresias about his route home. The dead come in their thousands. Odysseus has to keep them back with a sword so they don't overwhelm him before he's spoken to who he needs to speak to. His mother is there. He didn't know she died while he was away. He tries to embrace her 3 times and she passes through his arms like shadow. He meets Achilles, who has died too, as we expected at the end of the Iliad. He encounters the sirens. Their voices are so beautiful that sailors who hear them steer towards the rocks and die. Odysseus wants to hear them and survive, so he has himself lashed to the mast and fills his crew's ears with wax. He hears the sirens sing. He begs to be released. His crew, who can't hear his orders, row past. Scylla and Charybdis are the proverbial rock and hard place. A 6-headed monster on one side, a colossal whirlpool on the other. Odysseus chooses Scylla. He watches 6 of his men taken. He cannot help them. He describes this as the worst thing he witnessed in all his travels. Then his crew eat the cattle of the sun god Helios, which Odysseus explicitly told them not to do, and the gods destroy their ship and everyone dies. Odysseus survives alone. He washes up on Ogygia, and we're back to where we started with Calypso. When Odysseus finally reaches Ithaca, after the Phaeacians deliver him home on their shore, he arrives in disguise. He doesn't know what he's walking into. He needs information first. He talks to his swineherd, who doesn't recognise him, but feeds him and treats him with hospitality, complaining about the suitors with real feeling. He tests his son Telemachus, who has just returned from his own journey in search of news of his father. He reveals himself to Telemachus, carefully, gradually, and they weep together and make plans. He enters his own hall as a beggar. He watches. He waits. Penelope somehow senses something. She comes down and talks to this beggar. She tells him she's been asked to choose a husband and doesn't know what to do. He tells her, without revealing who he is, that Odysseus is alive and coming home. She listens. She decides, for reasons the poem leaves somewhat mysterious, to hold a contest. Whoever can string Odysseus' great bow and fire an arrow through the line of 12 axe heads will have her hand. None of the suitors can even string the bow. The beggar asks to try. He strings it. He fires. And then he and Telemachus and 2 loyal servants kill every single one of the suitors. These men have been eating at his house for 3 years and sleeping with his servants and trying to murder his son. Then he identifies himself to Penelope. And she hesitates. She does not simply fall into his arms. She tests him. She tells a servant to move the bed from their master chamber, out into the hall. Odysseus' reaction is immediate. "That bed cannot be moved," he said. He built it himself. One of its posts is a living olive tree, still rooted in the floor of the house. Only Odysseus could know that. She knows. She runs to him and she weeps, and he holds her. What I keep returning to in both poems is how honest they are about the costs of war. The Iliad is about Greek heroism, but it's also about what the hero's code does to people. Achilles is arguably the most destructive force in the poem, and he's on the right side. Hector, who dies, is arguably the most admirable person in it, and he's on the wrong side. The Odyssey is about homecoming, the great return, the clever man outwitting all obstacles. But it's also about what a decade of survival at any cost does to a man, and about what it costs the people waiting. Penelope's endurance is as extraordinary as any of Odysseus' adventures, and Homer knows it. And that's why the epics are still just as relevant today. Thanks for watching this video. Remember to like and subscribe to the Literary Buffet for the 5-minute summary and the 45-minute sleep story version of Homer's epics, and 20-minute versions of other classic literary tales.